Okay, so the question that Prabal asked is, given the fact that CRM modules and SCM modules are available from the major ERP vendors like SAP and Oracle, how is it then that vendors such as Salesforce.com are surviving? So in the software industry, the software market, we recognize two different categories of products, two different types of products. One are best of breed products, and another category is what's known as suite products. So a suite spelled as S-U-I-T-E, suite. So a suite is a collection of different modules, different subsystems. So what Oracle and SAP are, they are suite vendors. They're vendors of suite products because they sell a whole portfolio of products. So they're not actually, and it's not just the modules in finance and human resources. They also have other modules such as the CRM modules, the SCM modules. Now, Salesforce.com, it's not a suite vendor. It's a best of breed vendor. So there's a big difference between a best of breed vendor and a suite vendor. A best of breed vendor is so focused on one particular niche that it really has excellent expertise and a product in that particular niche. They've always been focused on that. They don't have the breadth that the suite players do. But the advantage of the best of breed vendors is that unique, distinctive capability that they have in a particular niche. So if you buy, you can certainly buy SCM and CRM modules from Oracle, from SAP, but they'll not be that functional as what you can get from a best of breed player like Salesforce.com in the CRM space. So therefore, we see the existence of both suite players and best of breed players. Companies that like the convenience that you get from buying the suite, at least whatever modules they need in that suite. Companies that like that feel the need for that tend to be customers of suite players, because now the onus is no longer on the customer to integrate different modules. It comes pre-integrated because it's coming from a suite player. So you don't have to, the customer doesn't have to spend time in doing the integration itself. But there are other players, but there are other types of customers who may want the deep capabilities that a particular best of breed player offers. So therefore, we often see a sort of heterogeneous implementations where you may have bought a suite with several different modules. Some of the key modules, you may have bought the ERP suite from Oracle, and you bought various key modules from them, like everybody needs the general ledger system, everybody needs the payroll system. Hey, you got to keep the accounts of the company. You got to pay your employees. So there are a lot of key modules, basic modules that they may have bought from the ERP vendor like Oracle or SAP. But at the same time, you feel that the capabilities that a specialist brings, a specialist firm like a Salesforce.com brings in a particular space, like the customer relationship management space, then you may need although you may have Oracle as your broad-based ERP vendor, you may need buy a best of breed product from a company like Salesforce.com. The same thing applies if you look at the SCM space, the supply chain management space. You can, there are specialist vendors in the supply chain management. Two of the specialists in SCM I think I may have mentioned this in one of my replies to the various notes that were posted on the forum. Two of the specialist players or best of breed players were Mangustics and i2 Technologies. They were specialists in supply chain management. Now JDA Software has actually acquired them, so JDA Software became the specialist in SCM. So the acquisition of Mangustics and i2 Technologies, but that's a suite. JDA Software did not offer an ERP system, so indeed there is a market for niche players as well.
So
And we do see
theoretically, a SAP sales module could extend itself and also communicate with the Salesforce best of breed implementation.
yes. So
Okay.
what we have is we
The
have
API.
various kinds of APIs
Okay.
that SAP offers, so that modules in SAP can be integrated with other applications. Now, what's happened over the last 5 years? This integration used to be somewhat kludgy and cumbersome, using these proprietary APIs. But what's been happening over the last 5 to 7 years is that those APIs have become industry standard. So now these interfaces are based on web services. We'll talk about web services at a later point. Web services, suffice it to say for now, is a standard interface that allows the services that a particular piece of software is providing to be invoked by another piece of software. So web services allows for integration of two different software packages built by different software vendors. And nowadays, the integration is done via the use of web services.
So if you have older systems, like if you're integrating with older government legacy systems like AS400 or some other things, could we wrap those in web services so we could integrate each
There
of
is
them?
there is that effort that has been happening for some time to be able for legacy systems to participate in the SOA environment, the service-oriented architecture environment. The SOA environment is how applications are built these days. In other words, the different modules in them allow for web services, and indeed, what we see is that legacy systems, which were built prior to the SOA architecture taking off in industry, what is being done is that you're providing wrappers so that the legacy functionality is wrapped around a web service interface, and the legacy functionality can be accessed through that web service interface.
Okay, thank you for those clarifications. I have a lot more
Okay.
reading to do. I think somebody
Questions from other folks? Adele Bowling, do you have some questions?
Hi, I'm Adele. I was just wondering if maybe you could talk about like some of the most important aspects to focus on for like studying for the quiz that's coming up.
So the quiz is actually going to have 30 multiple choice questions. So it'll the three types of questions you'll see are true and false. In fact, let me see if I have an example here. Okay, let me try and bring up Okay, so let's go to where are the quizzes? Quiz and exams. Quiz 1. Oh, let me just talk about it. All right, so so we can have a number of true and false questions, a number of multiple choice questions, and also a number of questions which are where you have to pick a set of right statements, pick a set of correct statements. So there are the question will have a number of statements in them, and you have to pick the right set of statements. So that's how I used to give a short essay question, but lately I've replaced those short essay questions by questions of this type where you're given the right set of statements and you have to pick the right combination of statements that are correct, because not all of those statements are correct. So that's the basic format. And what I would say in terms of how you prepare for that quiz is certainly you should be thoroughly familiar with the lecture PowerPoints and the recordings of those PowerPoints. Because what I've tried to do in the PowerPoints is I've tried to distill the most important, the essence of a chapter, if you will, and put that into the PowerPoint. I mean, obviously, in a lecture PowerPoint, I can't put every paragraph in there. So I've taken essentially the essence of what the lecture is and put that on the PowerPoint. So if you have thoroughly grasped the lecture and everything that's been said in the recordings, you should do fine. You should do fine. And the lecture and the quizzes are actually also a preparation for the exams. So so the type of questions that you'll encounter in the quizzes are pretty much the same type of questions that you would see in the exams themselves. So that becomes a good preparation for the exams.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. The book is useful for what I would say background information. So if you want a more expanded view of things, then you could need, I mean, I would certainly recommend that you also read the book, because I do want you to get that expanded view. Like I said, I can't put in every sentence in the book in the lecture PowerPoint. So I do, whenever I'm presenting something, I do bring in information from the book. I also bring in information from my own industry experience. I have about 15 years of industry experience in this IT industry. So I sometimes, bring that in as well. So it's certainly very useful to read the book as background information. But generally, I've never said a question whose answer is only in the book, and I never touched upon it in any of my lectures. I've actually never said a question like that. And there may be some sections in the book that I've not touched upon at all in my lectures. And if you come across any such section, then you can simply actually ignore that, because if I have not said anything about that section in any of my PowerPoint slides, then you can actually ignore that section, because there will not be a question like that in the exams.
Okay.
The tests. I was the Any other questions? I also wanted to have some discussion on that CRM case, but first before I move on to that, let me ask you if there are any other questions on anything, on any of the material, or
No.
No, not yet, at least. I'm sure soon.
okay. All right. Then let me go on to, okay, here are probably a couple of questions, maybe I can. All right, I was trying to bring up this. All right, so here is. I'm just trying to give you an example of a question. So let's switch to this. Okay. Okay, so so here are a couple of questions. So collecting on accounts receivables, performing market surveys, and hiring new employees, are they examples of business processes? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. We talked about business processes are things that bring value to the firm. So all of these are indeed business processes. So the questions are of this nature, and some questions could be, as I was saying, they could involve selecting a set of the right statements. So questions of that type are, so this question number 14 here, which of the following are the actors in the environment of information system? Customers, suppliers, regulatory agencies, stockholders, they're all actors. If you see one of the slides, if you go back to one of the slides, you'll see that there's a picture of an information system as a black box, and you have it'll show around that black box customers, suppliers, regulatory agencies, and that kind of thing in the environment of that black box. So the correct answer in that is yes, all of those are players in the environment of information system. Now, you notice that, well, the second question was directly lifted from the book and is in my slides as well. So you can simply go to that particular slide. It's the tests are all open book. So you can simply go to that particular slide and see, okay, hey, these are this slide shows that these are the players in the environment. So the quiz is timed for 1 hour. So I kept it at an hour to give you sufficient time to do the quick lookup, but if you're sitting down to read the book or look at the slides for the first time, then 1 hour is obviously not enough. So basically, I am indeed also you know, you do well in the quiz and the test if you have thoroughly reviewed the slides and the information accompanying the slides. And you could also, you know, give a read of the book as well for additional background information. But again, like I said, I gave you a question that, yeah, the slide is in the information on the slide is also in the book. And that's important enough to, you know, about discussing about the environment of the information system that I've felt the slide from that book, the graphic from the book should also be in the slide. So if you have reviewed all this, then you would quickly be able to locate the slide or locate the page in the book where the answer exists. But if you have not sat down to carefully look through the slides and as well read the book, and you're rummaging for information for the first time, then the exam you will find is tough, because it's not going to give you enough time to read the book and look through the slides for the first time. So you can do a quick lookup. It's time for an hour, so that if you have actually absorbed all the information, done your preparation, then you can quickly look it up, you know. And the first question, right when I introduced this is in my slides, when I say that a business is a collection of business processes which add value to the firm. So you can see from there that, you know, a business could not be in business if it didn't hire employees, if it didn't collect on its accounts receivables. So these are business processes that are necessary for a business to function. So they do involve some thinking, and to make sure you're giving the right answer, you can also quickly look up the portion in the slides or the you know, where the information resides.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I have to head out, but thank you so much for your help in answering my question.
Okay, excellent. I also wanted to cover today a little bit about the CRM video. So let me actually go through that as well. So let's actually take a quick look at that CRM video.
Sure.
Okay, so all right, let's take a quick review of this.
Sure.
For going out and marking a vehicle that's been abandoned for more than 72 hours. People would call in, and because the voice prompt wasn't clear for them, they didn't know if someone was on the line, if they were supposed to hear something, and they'd be like, hello, hello. Very frustrating.
What's interesting about this process is it's quite a simple procedure in theory. However, with a voicemail labyrinth that existed prior, it was challenging for citizens to find the appropriate voicemail box, leave a message.
Ford Bronco, two-door.
Sometimes we get multiple messages about the same vehicle. That process has been greatly streamlined by allowing for a centralized one contact phone call to 311 center and service request issued for that abandoned vehicle. 3-in-1 provides the human element, the interface.
I cannot see anything on my screen.
Yeah,
I can
one
hear
provides the
I
technology,
can't
the
see anything.
background, as well as the business process management on the back end to improve the service delivery.
The CRM team and the back office program provided me with a whole
Okay, let's,
new creativity that I did not know was part of that program.
We've been able to help our customers become more efficient through different means. Technology is obviously.
Okay, hold on a second.
Process change is also a big piece of what we do.
We work with clients, we identify their existing business processes.
So you couldn't really see any, you couldn't really see the videos what you're saying, right?
I wasn't able to see any of the video. I can hear the sound, the audio. That's about it.
Okay. All right. But you've seen the video yourself, right? Prior to coming here, were you able to view it yourself?
Oh, okay. The lecture video?
Yeah, not the lecture video, this video on the CRM case.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I haven't seen that, checked it out yet. It's in the course area.
Yeah, it's in this.
Supplementary materials.
Yeah, let me just. Yeah, it is in the supplementary materials.
Oh, okay.
So there is a link to that video.
Oh, I see it now. Okay.
And okay, so yeah, there's a link to that video. And also, let me see if I can share this in a different way that would make it visible to you. So let me see if I can do that. Okay, there's a little slight problem having on the screen here. So let's just talk about it. So this is a video on the City of San Francisco's Transportation Department installed a CRM system.
Okay.
The reason why I did this is that they had a problem with how abandoned vehicles were just, were just lying on the road, were just on the road, and they were not removed in time. And so this was creating a lot of inconvenience to the citizens of the city of San Francisco. So what does the CRM system do here? The CRM system is actually meant for increasing customer satisfaction, right? Meant for increasing customer satisfaction. And we had a customer satisfaction problem with the citizens of the city of San Francisco getting very frustrated at all these abandoned vehicles left on the roads. So one of the first points to make on this video is that CRM systems are not just for businesses. They can be used by other organizations. So here's you can think about this as a creative use of a CRM system. It's not just for a business.
Yeah,
It can be used by other people, other organizations, nonprofit organizations, government organizations.
Right. Hopefully they have the rest of the systems to back it up. Hopefully they have the towing service
Right.
connected to them.
Yes, that is indeed part of this. The first part is that, hey, we have a customer satisfaction problem, and we need to correct this. Every organization, be it an organization in the government or be it a business, it always has customers. It always has customers, and the first thing to recognize is, who are your customers? Well, the customers of the city of San Francisco Department of Transportation are the citizens of this of the city. So what they did was they deployed a CRM system to make the process of receiving a phone call from the customer about an abandoned vehicle, and then making sure that the service in this case is going out and picking up that abandoned vehicle and removing it from the roads, is then performed quickly and efficiently and with accountability. That's what a CRM system allows you to do. So, you can think of any complaint that a customer has in the context of whatever your organization is. Like I said, every organization does have a customer, does have customers. So now what they did was, prior to the CRM system being deployed, customers would call in, the people of the city of San Francisco would call in, the call would go from one department to another. That's what this lady talked about, this labyrinth of, where the call comes in and people get bounced from one department to another before, before the call actually reaches the right department. And also the service person who goes out and repairs or takes care of the customer's problem. In this case, the recovery people. They may not have. Maybe they did they didn't do the job correctly. Maybe in the recovery of that, you may have dented some other car that was on the road beside the abandoned car. So a CRM system also tracks the service delivery. The service delivery in this case is recovering the abandoned vehicle. But the software, from the standard of the software, the CRM system also tracks the service delivery all the way till the customer finally enters in the CRM system about their satisfaction with this. Or if they're not satisfied, they could indeed indicate that, and there should be follow-on service action taken to ensure customer satisfaction. So the CRM system, regardless of the organization, business, is for enhancing the satisfaction of the customer by, first of all, making sure that the service call gets to the right department, gets the right person, and the service repair person is dispatched in time, does a fine job, and all of that is recorded, and ultimately the bottom line is to enhance the satisfaction of the customer. So that's what this CRM deployment is doing. The second point I want to make about this CRM deployment, and you can watch the review. We can review this video once again, and this time, I can just sort of keep these points in mind as you kind of review the thing. The second point that I want to make is, we talked about knowledge workers. We talked about knowledge workers in the current economy, the digital economy, and particularly in the economies of advanced, affluent countries. It's the knowledge workers who are going to be there, who are going to be the most prominent and the most valued. Now, there were knowledge workers in this case. The knowledge workers were the ones, if you look at, you will find business process analyst, senior business process analyst, and on the technical side, there was that, the technical director. All these people are knowledge workers. The business process analysts, what they were doing was they were looking at this whole process of how the call was handled or mishandled, if you will, in the original setup, and they restructured this whole process to make it much more efficient and effective, and then that process was implemented. So these types of jobs, business process analysts, these are knowledge work jobs, and they cannot be outsourced. We can outsource the lower level clerical jobs, because we can, if you want to process an insurance claim, well, that can be done from 10,000 miles away by workers who cost 1/5 of the salaries of workers in the US. So those jobs, well, companies have been outsourcing them for a long time. But it's these knowledge worker jobs that can never be outsourced, because this is here, the person has to be completely in touch with the customer. The person sitting 10,000 miles away who can do some testing of software, or who can do some, the kind of work a medical transcriptionist does, or insurance claims person does, those procedural jobs can be outsourced. But this is a high touch job where you need to interface not just with the customers, you also on the back end, you need to interface with the technology people. So you're the center, you're the man or the woman, if you will. You're at the center of it. This kind of job can never be done effectively by somebody who's 10,000 miles away. So I wanted to sort of bring out who are the knowledge workers here. The business process analyst and the technical director who's interfacing with the business process analyst to then bring that process into the software. Another point I want to make is there's a difference between business automation and business transformation. So we talked about business automation and how these types of enterprise applications like ERP is doing business automation. Business automation essentially means instead of the process being done by humans and manually, it's done by the software. That's what business automation means. So it's removing and by definition, it brings you operational efficiency because you are replacing expensive human work and moving that into the software. So that's how it improves operational efficiency. So that's what business automation is. It is actually at the heart of it. It is the replacement of human labor by software. Business transformation is similar, but it actually goes a step further. In business automation, you are basically looking at what the human was doing and you are replicating that in the software. So instead of the human doing it, we'll have the software do it. That's business automation. Business transformation is we are first going to restructure the original business process. Rather than just take the original business process and move it into the software, we are going to restructure the original business process and then move the restructured business process where the business process has been streamlined, made more efficient, made more effective, and then move that restructured business process into the software. So that's called business transformation. What was being done in this particular case was actually business transformation. Because if you review the video once again, at your leisure, you'll see that the lady, the manager, talks about this labyrinth of information. These phone calls came into this big labyrinth and they just disappeared somewhere, and weren't correctly routed and all that kind of thing. And then it was all restructured so that they had a single point. They had a single point of entry. All these phone calls directly went to the CRM system. And then the CRM system did the dissemination of the phone calls, of the complaints to the right people. So here you are restructuring the process because you're changing the information flows. So when you change information flows, you make the information flows more rational. Then the process is being restructured prior to moving into the software. So that is business transformation. And that gives you more bang for the buck. Business automation also gives you bang for the buck because you're removing expensive human labor and replacing it by what's done in the software. So that's the business automation aspect of it, the replacement of expensive human labor by software, which is cheaper. But in business automation, typically you've not actually touched or radically changed the original business process. You've kept the business process the same and just you're making the software do it. In business transformation, no, you're restructuring the business process, making it more rational, making it more streamlined, and then moving the restructured business process into the software. So you get a better bang, or you get a better bang for the buck, if you will, when you're doing business transformation. So I want to make some of those points on this video, which are important takeaways from that video. First of all, the fact that CRM says these are not just for businesses. They can be used by many organizations. Every organization has a customer.
So these business analysts could be external consultants that were brought in to study the system, and
you could have external consultants, but the business process analysts were actually internal members of the Department of Transportation. They were internal members of that. So they were not external consultants.
okay.
The external people were actually the people who are employees of the vendor of the software. So the technical director that you saw, he's an external person because he's not a member, as far as I could get, he's not a member of the department. He's actually with the vendor organization.
Okay.
So he's external in that sense. But you do need this. Here's how you do need this close contact, because the business process analysts who are internal to the Department of Transportation, they are not only seeing the customer side, because they are getting the complaints from the from the customers of the essentially the citizens of the city of San Francisco with all these abandoned vehicles. So they are in touch with the customer side, and they're also in touch with the vendor side to make sure that this thing indeed gets done correctly. So that's a very central role, which there's no risk of that role getting outsourced.
Interesting.
And that's a knowledge worker role.
Right.
That's
I
a
was
knowledge
just
worker.
wondering if they were already there in the organization, why didn't they identify? Maybe they didn't have the CRM tool as a front-facing utility.
Yeah, previously they did not.
Okay.
Previously they did not. They didn't have a CRM tool facing the customers,
Okay. So
which in this case are the citizens of the city of San Francisco.
So he helped him close the loop. He helped them close the loop in a sense. Okay.
So the people inside the department, they were facing this problem, and they were talking about, well, how do we fix this problem? And then they brought in the CRM vendors, the CRM vendor, and the technical director there is part of the CRM vendor team.
Okay.
And the business process team inside the department then worked with the vendors, that's the technical director, and they also essentially saw what the problem is, from the customer side, because they're in touch with the customers. And then they sat down and, okay, we got to sort this process out. We got to rationalize this process. They did the whole mapping of how the information should flow, how it should come into a single point rather than come into all these different points, the labyrinth in the phone system that the manager was referring to. And so then the business process analysts were critical in terms of restructuring these information flows, and working with the technical director from the vendor organization in how now you're going to move these information flows and the processing into the software, the CRM software.
Okay, and then that'll somehow tie into the dispatch system to the towing service.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's the dissemination of the information. So once the information comes in to a single point, rather than this phone system labyrinth where things may have got lost, then the dissemination, so dispatching the service repair people, which in this case are the people who are going to recollect the vehicles abandoned on the road.
Okay.
And a person on the citizen of San Francisco who initially logged the call is also permitted to track the status of the call all the way through the service having been delivered, the car having been removed without damage and injury caused to any vehicles nearby. In other words, was the job done with quality as opposed to in a slipshod fashion without quality to it.
Okay. I'll review the video.
One other point that I want to make on this video is the manager, there's this overall manager. That's the lady who first came on in the video, who's the overall manager of the department. Now, question often arises, and this is this is in general, and this manager is just one specific example of this. Is, do we call a manager a knowledge worker?
Yeah, I would say they understand. They have the bigger picture of business processes. So
Yeah, there are two thoughts about this. One is the one that you were saying, they have the bigger picture. But the other thought is that they're not actually doing the work. The knowledge worker is somebody who is doing the work, who's doing the intellectual work, and in this case, rationalizing that whole information labyrinth and making it more streamlined and structured. And they could also be using software tools to do this. So this is one instance of knowledge work. There are other instances of knowledge work, where, let's say, a market analyst is trying to do market segmentation. So they could be using software tools to perform their job. Now the manager is not performing the job, meaning he's not the person on the hook to produce this result of how do you rationalize the information flows and all of that. The manager is to basically evaluate the performance of the people who did the work. And the performance of people who did the work is really not viewed as knowledge work, because you can have set performance criteria, such as, okay, if this thing worked, you would see that the number of irate phone calls would go down. So the number of complaints that were made would go down after the CRM system was deployed. So no matter how complex a job or some work can be, evaluating it using preset criteria is not a complex job. Even if you are a manager in NASA, the National Aerospace Agency, a manager, unless they're deeply involved in doing the job, in producing the results, that will make them a knowledge worker. Now, some managers actually are also participants in the work itself. There are some managers who are like that. If you're that kind of a manager, then your work is knowledge work. But if you're a manager who is purely in the supervisory end of things, even if the people who are say, reporting to you are doing hell of a complex job, but if you're only supervising in the sense of evaluating the results of the work they did, well, you can match it with criteria. Hey, if you're building a rocket to the moon, did it go to the moon or not? So even if, no matter what organization you're in, if your job is essentially supervisory in nature, then it is not considered knowledge work. So in this case, you have the customers, the irate people in the city of San Francisco. You got those business process analysts who are rationalizing all of this. They're knowledge workers. You've got the technical director on the vendor side. That's a knowledge worker. The manager, the overall person in charge, is actually not a knowledge worker. That's generally how things are viewed.
Oh, excuse me. I've been listening for about like 20 minutes. I thought it was fascinating about when you talked about managers. You were saying that the manager who supervises like the workers, they are not knowledge workers, but the managers who participate with like the corporate and the workers is considered a knowledge worker? Or what about if they have like a college degree and they're just supervising workers?
If they're supervising workers, they're not considered knowledge workers. You have to be, for a manager to be considered knowledge worker also, you have to be part of the team that is producing the result, that is producing the work that needs to be done. So if there are some people, like in software organizations, you can find people, the person who's managing the team and supervising the team is actually also building a software module in the system being developed. Then that manager becomes a knowledge worker. Because if that manager is also producing a module, and I've seen that often, in the software system that is being developed, in addition to supervising the team, then that manager would be a knowledge worker. But managers who are simply doing supervision and performance evaluation and that kind of thing, the types of stuff that a supervisor or manager does, then that manager's job is not considered to be knowledge worker job. But they're not producing that intellectual product that is what this team is on the hook